Hey, princesses, want to talk about running through Disney?
Yes, you do.
Then this is the video for you.
To all who come, see, I need to read this. This is why video is not going to work.
This is going to be outtakes for days. For days.
Okay, to all who come to our happy place, welcome to the No Guilt Disney podcast, where we have no guilt about our love for all things Disney.
We are three Disney fangirls who probably know more about the Disney parks than most grown women should. And we're perfectly okay with that. But also, we're only two people today.
Perfectly okay with that. An explanation for that. It's the topic.
It's a topic.
There's no other reason. Like, we didn't kick Teresa out. We still love her. She still loves us, I hope. Teresa, do you still love us?
Please tell us.
But she doesn't do runDisney like we do runDisney.
Right.
So she's not here on this episode, which if you've watched... I haven't watched any of them.
You haven't watched any of them because this is our first one.
If you've listened to any of our podcast episodes, then you know this about Teresa and you know this about us. And this is, I think, the third year that we've done this. But we did this last year. We were talking about this. That there's like this period of time where it's kind of like the Jane and Patty show, but it's not like there's no reason other than just Teresa doesn't participate at the runs. And so
Correct.
She feels like she doesn't have as much to contribute, and that's why she's not on the show. But there's three of us.
We swear.
Promise. We love her. She'll be back.
She'll be back next week.
All right. Who are you?
So I'm Jane. You can find me on Instagram at RealMousewifeWDW. That's about it for now.
There's more. She's holding back on you guys.
There is more, but we'll hold that off for another time.
Okay. I'm Patty Holiday with the No Guilt Universe. That's what I love to call it. And that was given to us by a podcast listener, so I appreciate you. But I've been writing blogs online for years and years, and it's the No Guilt Disney podcast, NoGuiltDisney.com, No Guilt Life, and No Guilt Fangirl. Thank you. I was like, there's none more. So there's a lot of different options if you like different types of content. I got you covered. Hit me up. Let me know what you're looking for, and I probably have written something about it. But one of the things we have always loved to talk about, and Jane and I bonded from this. This is how we met.
That's how we met.
Is runDisney. So we just had a runDisney race weekend just last weekend. The Princess Half Marathon weekend occurred. A little history. It was my first race. It's not my favorite weekend. I won't go that far because no. Big hint right there as to what our favorite weekend is. But always. But I do love the Princess Half Marathon weekend for a lot of reasons. It was where I first ran a half marathon, and not only that, like I was almost 6 months pregnant when I ran that first half marathon.
That sounds terrible.
It was terrible. I won't lie. It was terrible. But I've come back every year since 2011 for this race weekend. And a lot of it has to do with just the vibe and what happens at the Princess Half Marathon weekend. And so if you are sitting there going, I saw this race when I was there last week, I didn't know it was a thing.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. And we're going to tell you a little bit about what we experienced and how the race weekend went. Also tell you how you can join a runDisney race weekend, because those races for next year are about to go on sale. So we're going to get to that. I think that's going to be in a different video, though. Right?
Yeah, we'll send you another video for that. For those of you on the podcast, there will be another podcast episode about that as well. So
yeah, if you're a podcast listener, then you don't need to watch the video. But if you're curious and you want to watch the video, hi,
we love it. I hope you thought of me beautifully. Honestly.
Of course. Why wouldn't they? I think they know you by now.
Well, but it's just weird, right? If you're a podcast listener and you're just joining us, for those of you who are joining us on video, we've been on a podcast for 3 years. So this is really brand new for us. We're like slightly awkward in front of the camera.
Very awkward in front of the camera, in case you could not tell.
We don't usually record podcasts even together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm based in Florida. Patty is based outside of Washington, D.C. So we are constantly just calling, never really seeing each other in person, but we decided to switch it up. We're going to add some video for those people who love video, because we've been getting that request.
Yes.
We're going to continue with the podcast. So if you prefer to have this in audio, you can check us out on every podcast player.
It's still coming to you in the regular way.
And it's exactly the same.
Correct. It's going to be the same. The same hot mess.
Same hot mess that this video is currently starting out to be.
Yeah. But back on topic, we're going to talk about runDisney, and we're going to talk about the Princess Half Marathon weekend.
Yes.
And we are going to start with something that we did last year. We didn't do it this year, but we're going to talk about. I thought it looked even better this year than last year, and that's the yoga experience.
Oh yeah, yoga was cute.
So yoga is the first thing. This is a new addition to the runDisney race weekends. They are only doing yoga at this time. They're doing it for Princess, and they're doing it for Springtime Surprise, and they're also doing it at Disneyland. I'm gonna do yoga at
They
Disneyland.
don't do yoga at Wine and Dine?
Nope. Not at Marathon Weekend either.
I knew Marathon Weekend they skipped, but I thought they did it at Wine and Dine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
So right now, those are the only times that you can add on this yoga experience. It's like $110, so it is not a cheap yoga experience, but
Disney.
Yeah, but it is a Disney yoga experience, and I think the key thing that I took from it is that you get some of the cool things that make runDisney different than just like a regular road race. Mm-hmm. You get the same thing that makes this yoga experience different than just a regular yoga class. You do get a nice long stretch. You get a good peaceful feeling when it's all said and done. Like we walked out of that experience last year going, that felt great. Like I felt good.
Yeah. And we're not yoga people. We're not very bendy.
Not bendy at all. But it was comfortable. It was fun.
It was good.
It was good for beginners. So if you're a beginner, like, don't stress out. This is definitely beginner friendly. Our biggest complaint last year, which they solved this year, was the lack of the mats that they provided. They were crappy last year. I'll just be honest. They
were those cheap, like the super cheap purple ones that you get at like, it was blue. I have a purple one that is the same thing. But they're like the super cheap ones that you buy like Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever.
Teeny tiny thing. They weren't very thick. They weren't very comfortable.
They weren't branded. They weren't special. I want special. I'm a princess.
For $109, you better give those princesses something cute. That's all I had to say.
It's true.
And that was our biggest complaint. And I actually talked to somebody at Expo last year, and they did say that it was supply chain. We were still dealing with a lot of supply chain issues at the time. So that was what their answer was, that they would definitely make it up and that it would be better the next time around, yada, yada, yada. Well, these were cute.
They were cute.
They were like teal, and it had runDisney branding like right across it, and they looked a lot thicker. I saw them when I went shopping at the expo. I saw a girl walking around with it. And I was like, do you mind if I touch it? Do you mind if I look at it? Because I just need to compare. And she was very cool. She was like, yeah, go ahead, weirdo. But she let me, and I did. Mm-hmm. Patted it. It was very cute. So that's the good news, is I do think that was a big step up compared to what we had last year. I watched some videos and talked to some people who did the experience this year, and they loved it. They said it was just as good as last year as far as like the actual instructors and the experience. You got some characters there at the end. Cinderella shows up. And this year she had the two mice with her, Susie and Perla. Is it
yes,
Perla?
Susie and Perla.
Susie and Perla, they were there with her. And then at the very end, you get your fireworks. I mean...
Did we get fireworks
We
last
got
year?
fireworks.
I don't remember. I don't remember yesterday.
We sure did. I know you don't. But yes, we did. So they brought all of that back. And I think, once again, the yoga, it's just a very cool experience. And because it's Princess, they do it in front of the castle.
Yeah.
So as a heads up to that,
Springtime
Surprise is also doing yoga, but they're not doing it in Magic Kingdom. They're actually going to do it in Hollywood Studios, which I did sign up for that. So I will come back and give you guys the full rundown and review as to where we're going to be located. I assume we're going to be located in front of Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railroad.
Yeah, in front of the Chinese theater. Yeah.
Yes, just because of spacing and to lay people out and to have room to do it. That's my guess is where it will be.
Yes.
To be on theme, doing something in Toy Story Land would be on theme for the weekend, but I don't think there's space.
I don't think there's space there. The other option could be on Sunset Boulevard.
Could be.
And the reason I say that is, I mean, it's a little difficult. There's no actual stage there where there's actually a spot for a stage in front of the theater. but they do have the billboards that have the they can show video on it, so it would be easy for them to stream the instructor there. So
I'm just
that
not sure
could
that
also be an option.
The Tower of Terror is that peaceful to look at while you're doing yoga, unless they like.
Well, they're not screaming. No one's actually riding.
Oh, I'm aware, but anyway, we'll see.
It depends.
Keep you posted. Keep you posted on that. So this race weekend starts out with yoga. If you and all of this, like you can do one, you can do all, assuming you can get into them. You can do one, you can do all, True. You can do bits and pieces, whatever. But so yoga is the first thing you do. After yoga, everybody goes to the expo because there was all these yoga girls with their yoga mats who came straight to the expo. And for the first time, I've been doing these races since 2011. For the first time, I did a rope drop. I was there when it opened. I think we were merchandise group.
You were 11? 8 or 9?
Yeah, something like that. 11. I think Megan was 8 or 9. Probably we were 11. Yeah. So we got in very early as far as that was concerned, and I've never done that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you did it.
Yeah. No. To be fair, it wasn't that bad, but it was still not my jam. It's not my cup of tea. Normally I do what Jane did.
Yeah, so I worked that day, so I had to go after work, and I went around 7 p.m. And it was delightful. It was still very busy, so like I had taken video and sent my friends, and they were like, "I can't believe how many people are still there." It was only about an hour before closing, but everything was quick. Like my bib pickup was super quick. No lines. There was no virtual queue for merchandise. I just waltzed right into merchandise. Of course, the merchandise at that hour is very picked through. There was plenty there to shop if you're looking for 10K merchandise, or 5K merchandise is even left. There was minimal challenge merchandise. So if you're not really concerned about the merchandise that you get, and you're like, hey, I'll pick something up if it's cute, which is kind of how I am, because I have a lot of this stuff. It was great. I thought it was great. I thought, yes, I did Patty's Way in January for marathon weekend, and it was not for me at all.
Okay, so we will usually the princesses get a bad rap.
It's true.
Usually day one, hour one of the Princess Half Marathon Expo is a nightmare, and there have been literal fights. There have been broken wine glasses. There's been it's been a little crazy, but that was not my experience. It was just a lot of people and a lot of intensity. Like these ladies were not messing around. They had like 3 or 4 jackets each, and they were sitting over and trying them on. And the good news was they weren't just dumping them on the floor like they did at Marathon Weekend. They were hanging them back up and hung them back up on the racks. But as soon as somebody walked over and hung it on the rack, it was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody else was snatching it right up. So
it's a lot.
It was a lot. It was just people like their merch. But that was my first experience. I went and I did the rope drop, as I call it. There were some characters at the expo, which is always so cute. After we left the merchandise, we went and picked up our bibs. This was a new experience for me because, again, I was there so early. Mm-hmm. They actually had a queue. They had back and forth, lines to get into the building, where normally I do the Jane method, where I show up at 7 or whatever it is, and I just waltz right in, and I'm able to literally walk right in, walk right up, get my bib, and walk right out. I mean, if I'm in that building for more than 5 minutes, it's because I stopped to go to the bathroom.
Right. Or took a picture. In my case.
Right. So this time, though, we had queue outside. And then when we got into the building, I'm like, we're going down the stairs. And they're like, no, you're not. You're going this way. And I was like, what are we doing? All right. We went to a whole other section where, again, they had us going through a queue line before we walked around the whole entirety of the second floor of the expo before we finally got down to the expo floor, where normally you walk in and you go straight down to the expo floor. But we had it was a whole process.
It's a lot.
And it was new. So all of this is to say, and the reason I'm sharing this with you is if you think that you want to go to day one, hour one of the expo, everyone says pack your patience, but they're not joking. That literally is what you need to do, because it is a different beast than if you show up any time later in the day. You're just not going to have these lines. So we have these lines. The lines did move quickly. By the time I got down there and was able to pick up my bib, it was easy peasy. I did take some pictures because they had some cute backdrops and stuff. This was the 15th anniversary of the Princess Half Marathon weekend. So they had a cute like number 15 that I wanted to take a picture with.
I didn't even see that one.
Yeah, it was cute.
I did the chip photo. It had like the bell backdrop.
Listen.
It was a chip magic photo.
Listen, I was mad about this. PhotoPass.
Don't be mad. It's chip.
PhotoPass finally came out with runDisney specific magic shots. But they didn't announce it till I had left the expo. And there was one that was like the running Mickey and Minnie.
Yeah.
That was only available at the expo. And dude,
I didn't even get it when I was there.
Once I left, I wasn't going back.
Yeah.
That was just my deal.
I didn't even know that it was there.
They didn't announce it until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
Right. I still could have gotten it.
You still totally could have, and you didn't. But whatever. You got chipped. That's cute.
I did.
But so this is a good news, bad news thing. Like the good news is this existed now. So if you're going next year,
it's probably going to come back.
It's probably going to come back because I think it was very popular. And now that they've done it, like why wouldn't like they have the file or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's an easy ad.
So I would look for that and I would ask for it. I think that's the key thing. If you're there day one, hour one, and they haven't made the big announcement, ask somebody at
if they have it.
Photo backdrops if there's any magic shots. Because I wanted to do it only because it was brand new and I'd never done it before. But I was bummed and I didn't care enough to go back to do it.
I understand.
Because I'm also not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I when I was there were still characters there. So if you do like if you have a flight that arrives at the end of the day or something like that, you know,
so they were still there.
They were still there. There were other backdrops. I just didn't take them. There were 2 magic shots in where you picked up your bibs. There was one with Chip, and then the other one I forgot what it was. I just left. I was like, I want to go.
I think that was the running Mickey one.
Oh, maybe.
I think it was.
Maybe. Oh, well, I didn't take that one.
I think the backdrop that I saw was like a generic like running.
Maybe. Yes, and it could have been because that would have been why I would have skipped it because I was like, I don't need that. Sorry, I just got a tweet from Bob Iger. Very, very important news. So I took that photo and then I went over to pick up my shirts in the like main expo, like the shopping, like the non-Disney merchandise shopping area. I went over there to pick up my shirts. That area was very crowded.
What do we call that? Because I always feel like that's the real expo. Like,
I do
that's
too.
The running expo.
That's what
like, there's merch
and there's
expo and then there's bib pickup.
So that's what we're gonna call it.
Okay. So if you're new here and you've never done runDisney, know that there's going to be 3 stops for you.
3 buildings.
One of them is essential, and that is the bib pickup. You're not going to run a race without a bib, period. The
expo.
T-shirt, the expo,
right,
is only important if you want your shirt. Like you can go in, get your shirt, and leave. You don't even have to shop or anything, but they have all kinds of stuff. And if you had forgotten something, if you needed gels, if you needed blocks, if you needed socks, if you needed a bra, like if you needed a skirt, if you needed anything.
Also, if you don't need things, but you want things,
that's the spot to go.
You can go.
So that's the expo. That's like all the runners specific stuff. Okay. And then the third place is the merchandise. And rolling back to what we kind of glossed over in the merchandise situation, you have to have at this point in time, this could change, caveat of everything. So if you're watching for next year, they could get rid of this whole process. But this year in 2023, they've done it for these 2 races. And actually they did it for the Wine and Dine race too. So it's now 3 races. So I feel like it's working for runDisney. I feel like it's working for the runners for the most part. So it's probably going to stick around. And that is a virtual queue sign up kind of situation to get into the merchandise room. You can't just show up, line up, and walk in. You have to go online, get your app out, get very familiar with your My Disney Experience app. By the way, if you have any questions, if I'm like glossing over this too quickly or you're a visual person, noguiltdisney.com. I will link in the comments all the blog posts that we're going to kind of like mention or something that can help you. But that's where you're going to go and look to read all the details and to see visuals, because sometimes like screenshots or pictures of how things work out That's how I work better. And that's just where you would want to go. So if you're listening on the podcast or you're watching on the video, either way, that information is going to be right there in show notes for you to click on and go over to noguiltdisney.com for this. But there's a virtual queue to get into that merchandise. The other two places, you don't need to mess with that. Like if you just want your bib and your shirt and get out, you don't have to mess with the virtual queue. But if you do want to shop for anything official merch,
only if you want to shop in like the very first day one, super, super early. I wanted to stop in. I always like to stop in. I love to get a magnet, even though I have way too many magnets. I always get one because what's one more? And I'm a magnet collector now.
I'm a magnet collector now.
So I did not sign up for virtual queue because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get there earlier in the day. And then later in the day, they open it up. So if you're planning on getting there day one, you're going to pick up your bibs, but you're like, oh, I'm not going to get there till 6 o'clock. You don't have to worry about it. Just don't. You can just waltz right in. There's nobody even there checking. They don't expect you to do it. But if you do plan on going earlier, and I know even the 3 o'clock hour, the 4 o'clock hour, probably. They still kind of require virtual queue. Yeah. So if you're going to go a little bit earlier, I would definitely sign up for one. If you miss your callback time, because frequently it'll say, hey, your callback time is in 5 hours. And then in 2 hours, they're like, surprise, it's your callback time. If you miss your time, you can show up later. Yeah. So if that is super, super important to you, focus on virtual queue. If you're not going to show up till later in the day, skip it. Don't even worry about it. Sleep in that morning, whatever. Get on your plane. Do what you need to do. And also, people should know that in order to sign up for the virtual queue, you have to be within 45 miles of Disney World. So if you're getting on your plane in New York at 6 a.m., arriving at 9, you will not be able to sign up until 9 o'clock when you are here. Correct. So just keep that tip in mind.
More details in the blog post.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the expo. Is you do have to go to the expo to get your bib, to get your shirts.
Yes.
To get your crap.
And in merchandise, I did want to mention that later in the day, even going at 7 o'clock at night, there are characters that were there. Princess Minnie was there and Princess Daisy was there. Mm-hmm. And their lines were still relatively long.
Yeah.
So that was surprising, but they were much shorter than I expected during the day. I remember I waited for Dopey in January, not for me, for somebody else that was running Dopey. And we waited probably close to an hour to see him in January. Yeah, did not love.
Yeah,
did not love.
I was not a fan of that.
And for Daisy, I did not wait for Minnie. Her line was longer. I waited for Daisy, and I think I waited 5 minutes. So if that's also important to you, then end of day is a great time of day to get those character photos.